Hi, my name is Linda, and my research is about the social learning behavior in dubia cockroaches. Also, I got this idea from the cells to eliminate all the cockroaches in my home because they are really annoying and they are pests. So I think cockroaches are social learning social behavior social animals, and I want to better understand their behaviors in order to eliminate them. So for the introduction part, social learning behaviors is a transmission of new behavior patterns throughout the group or through observations or other interactions with others. And it has been proved in many species, for example, mammals such as humans or chimpanzees, and also birds and insects, including bees, ants, and fruit flies. However, there have not been proved any social learning behaviors in cockroaches before. Although there haven't been proved for social learning behaviors, many scientists have proved that cockroaches have the learning behaviors, which means that they can learn some given task. So for the method part, the first is about my experimental objects. I actually chose dubia cockroaches to be my experiment objects because they are larger than American and German cockroach, which are the cockroaches that usually appear in people's house. And dubia cockroach cannot fly easily and they can move slower. So it is easier for me to handle the experiment. And for the because I want to examine the social learning behaviors, so I first need to test that the single cockroach has a learning behaviors and they can learn the task designed by me. And then I can prove that the second cockroach can learn from the first cockroach to prove that the cockroach have the social learning behavior. So to proving the learning behaviors, I designed a Y maze, which is shown in this diagram. And I use operant conditioning paradigm, which means to associate voluntary behaviors. In this case specifically, it's a choice of the right arm of the maze or the left arm of the maze to associate this with a stimulus. In this specific case, is the punishment end. So I got the electronic shock in the punishment end with a 15 volt and 1 MA, and also the reward end. And for this reward end, I have food, which is basically plain bread with no special smell. And this is the Y maze I used to train and test the cockroaches. And for the Y maze, these two punishment end and the reward end had identical lines, and it has an angle of 120 degrees, which make the path more natural than the T maze. And I also put a removable gate at this right place, so the cockroach can enter. This is the entrance for the cockroach, and it can decrease the time the cockroach stay in this middle arm in order to save the time of the whole research. So for the training method, I basically divide it into two phases. The first phase one, which I mentioned above, is to verify the existence of the individual learning behaviors in the given task. So the first cockroach, which I call it trainer, was placed at the gate, and this cockroach is free to move around and explore this maze with stimulus. I can say this cockroach is being trained successfully for one time. Then the cockroach entered the gate and choose the reward end within 1 minute and stay in the reward end for more than 1 minute. So I call this a successfully trained trial. And I will train the cockroach for 5 trials with a rest of 5 minutes apart to reinforce its memories. So it's this 5 green spots is for the training trials. And this red one is for the testing trial. I just remove all the stimulus and test the cockroach to let it freely explore the maze for another 10 minutes. And the second part of the experiment is phase 2. It is to explore the ability of social learning. Also, as I mentioned above, I need to first train the cockroach, trainer cockroach, and I train the trainer cockroach as a same method. Also 5 trials with a rest of 5 minutes. After I train the trainer cockroach, I put a tester cockroach, which is a second cockroach, together in the maze with the trainer cockroach. And you can see that these two cockroaches stay together in the maze. And this time the maze is without stimulus. So this is the learning time for the second cockroach. And the second cockroach will actually follow the path of the first one. And after 10 minutes of learning process, I will remove the trainer cockroach, which is this white one, and let the tester cockroach, which is this black one, to explore the maze freely for another 10 minutes. And this is a testing process for the tester cockroach. Also, I also have a control group for the phase 2, which is training naive cockroach, also explore the maze freely for 10 minutes. And for the sample size, for both phases, I got 6 cockroach. And for the control group, I also have 6 cockroaches. So in total, there are 18 cockroaches involved in this experiment. And after the whole training and testing process, I recorded all those process with videos, and the total time that the cockroach spent in the maze, and also the time they spent in individual arms was being collected. And I basically use these 3 parameters to evaluate the this outcome. So the first one is called time ratios, which means the time the cockroach spent in one arm divided by the time they spent in the whole maze. And the second is called the latency of decision making, which means the total time between the cockroaches enter these entries and the time they successfully trained, which means that they choose the right arm and stay for more than 1 minute. And the third parameter is called preference index, which means the time ratio in reward and minus the time ratio in punishment divided by the time ratio in reward and plus time ratio in punishment end. So for the preference index, it's basically examine the magnitude of how the cockroach prefer reward and then the punishment end. And after the whole training process, here is my result. So the first result is the baseline of this experiment. Before I did all of those experiments of testing and training, I test whether the cockroaches, the training naive cockroaches, have the preference to two ends. And the result is that the training naive cockroaches do not have a significant preference between these two ends. And after I set this baseline, I just started my experiment. And for the first result, it is of the first two figure. It is about the training phase 1 result. So for this first figure, it is a comparison of the time ratio of the two ends. And for this figure, it is the result of the testing process for the phase 1 of the experiment. So we can say that in this figure, the cockroach spent around 0.58 time ratio in reward end and 0.12 time ratio in punishment end. And by using the student t-test, I find that there's a significant difference between these two time ratio, which means that the cockroach spends significant more time in the reward end than the punishment end. So I can conclude that the cockroach actually can distinguish these two ends, and they decided to choose the reward end with food instead of the punishment end. And for the second figure, I use the latency of decision-making time to be the y-axis. So this graph is describing the latency of decision-making time trained done with more training trials. So basically, the latency of decision-making time decreased significantly from around 54 seconds to around 3 seconds after the trial numbers increases. So which means that for the first training trial here, the cockroach actually chose the correct end around 54 seconds. However, as the training trial's time increases, at the fifth training trial, the cockroach can choose the correct end with only around 3 seconds. It shows that the cockroaches can learn really fast and choose the correct end. And for this graph, this figure is about the phase 2 result. It is a comparison of the preference index of the study group, which is the phase 2 testing group, and also the phase 2 control group. So we can see that the preference index for the study group is around 0.59, while the preference index for the control group is around 0.13. And by using the student's t-test, there is also a significant difference between these two groups. So I can conclude that the second cohort in the study group it is can really distinguish between the reward and the punishment, and then the cockroach in the control group. So for this study group, it is basically I collect the time ratio of the tester cockroach testing round and to calculate the preference index I mentioned here, and it is significantly bigger than the preference index for the control group. So I can conclude that the second tester cockroach actually learned from the first trainer cockroach and can distinguish the two ends of the maze. So here is my conclusion. The first conclusion is that the individual cockroach can learn the given task, and they actually learn really quick because the latency of decision-making time decreased significantly as the trial's numbers increase. And the second conclusion is that cockroach actually have social learning ability, which means that they can learn from the others. And without training individually, the tester cockroaches made some similar decision with the trainer cockroach in the maze by staying together with the trainer cockroaches. And that's the end of my poster and all of my results. And for the future study, I may wanted to increase the sample size and also trying to discover the mechanism of this learning process. For example, I will test the cockroaches in the new maze to exclude the ability that the cockroach may learn from others by the sense live in the maze. And thanks very much. I think that is all of my presentation.
Great work and great presentation. Thank you, Linda. Let's see our audiences. Do you have any questions for Linda? While we are waiting for the questions from our audiences, I do have a question for Linda. So why do you want to study cockroaches? I see probably at home we might have cockroaches, but I mean, it's not an insect that a lot of people enjoy. So why do you want to even start this research?
Oh, so basically, as Dr. Wang mentioned, like there are a lot of cockroaches in my home, and I really dislike them. But I think now we do not have a really good method to eliminate all of the cockroaches. I just wanted to better understand how they interact with each other and how they learn from each other, and hope after studying this, I can provide some new insights of how to eliminate all those cockroaches.
That's wonderful. For your research results, have you find any effective way to eliminate cockroaches?
Not yet, but
Okay.
that might be my next step, because I want to trying to examine the like specific mechanism how they can interact with each other. I hope after I explore that, it might like provide some suggestions.
Sounds good. Thank you, Linda.